Words of Sri Aurobindo from the book The Mother, Part 2, Letters on the Mother by Our Lord, Chapter Working of the Mother's Force, page 140, new stanza. Sri Aurobindo says, certainly, in a sense, the descent of the higher powers is the Divine Mother's own descent, for it is she who comes down in them. When the peace is established, this higher or divine force from above can descend and work in us. It descends usually first into the head and liberates the inner mind centers, then into the heart center and liberates fully the psychic and emotional being, then into the navel and other vital centers and liberates the inner vital, then into the Mooladhara and below and liberates the inner physical being. It works at the same time for perfection as well as liberation. It takes up the whole nature part by part and deals with it, rejecting what has to be rejected, sublimating what has to be sublimated, creating what has to be created. It integrates, harmonizes, establishes a new rhythm in the nature. It can bring down to a higher and yet higher force and range of the higher nature until, if that be the aim of the sadhana, it becomes possible to bring down the supramental force and existence. All this is prepared, assisted, furthered by the work of the psychic being in the heart center. The more it is open in front, active, the quicker, safer, easier the working of the force can be. The more love and bhakti and surrender grow in the heart, the more rapid and perfect becomes the evolution of the sadhana. For the descent and transformation imply at the same time an increasing contact and union with the divine. That is the fundamental rationale of the sadhana. It will be evident that the two most important things here are the opening of the heart center and the opening of the mind centers to all that is behind and above them. For the heart opens to the psychic being and the mind centers open to the higher consciousness, and the nexus between the psychic being and the higher consciousness is the principal means of the siddhi. The first opening is effected by a concentration in the heart, a call to the divine to manifest within us, and through the psychic to take up and lead the whole nature. Aspiration, prayer, bhakti, love, surrender are the main supports of this part of the sadhana, accompanied by a rejection of all that stands in the way of what we aspire for. The second opening is effected by a concentration of the consciousness in the head, afterwards above it, and an aspiration and call and a sustained will for the descent of the divine peace, power, light, knowledge, Ananda into the being, the peace first or the peace and force together. Some indeed receive light first, or the Ananda first, or some sudden pouring down of knowledge. With some, there is first an opening which reveals to them a vast, infinite silence, force, light, or bliss above them, and afterwards, either they ascend to that, or these things begin to descend into the lower nature. While others, there is either the descent first into the head and then down to the heart level, then to the navel and below, and through the whole body, or else an inexplicable opening without any sense of descent, of peace, light, whiteness, or power, or else a horizontal opening into the cosmic consciousness, or in a suddenly widened mind, an outburst of knowledge. Whatever comes has to be welcome, for there is no absolute rule for all. But if the peace has not come first, care must be taken not to swell oneself in exaltation or lose the balance. The capital moment, however, is when the divine force or Shakti, the power of the mother, comes down and takes hold, for then the organization of the consciousness begins and the larger foundation of the yoga. What you feel streaming down must be the mother's overhead force. It flows usually from above the head and works at first in the mind centers, head and neck, and afterwards goes down into the chest and heart and then through the movement of the whole body. It is the effect of this working which you must be feeling in the head up to the shoulders. The force that comes down from above is the one that works to transform the consciousness into that of a higher spiritual being. Before that, the mother's force works in the psychic, mental, vital, and the physical plane itself to support, purify, and psychically change the consciousness. The stream which you feel coming down on the head and pouring into you is indeed a current of the mother's force. It is so that it is often felt. It flows into the body in currents and works there to liberate and change the consciousness. As the consciousness changes and develops, you will begin yourself to understand the meaning and working of these things. Date 21/8/1936.